everybody can hear me okay. Can somebody please send a chat or something if you cannot hear me and let us know if there's any problems with the audio. So I'm going to go ahead and start my screen sharing here. And we're going to go ahead and begin today's presentation. So I just want to thank you guys for attending the D3 Factory Design Suite webinar. We really appreciate and respect your time this morning. This webinar will be approximately 15 to 20 minutes. Due to the limited time frame that we're working with, we are going to provide a means at the end of this session to follow up with you regarding any questions you might have. So we ask that you please make note of any questions as we go along, and as I said, there will be a means at the end of the presentation for you to request a representative to follow up with you. Also, we will be doing some 3 short polls at the end of the presentation, so we'd really appreciate your feedback on those. And I just wanted to mention that we are going to be giving away a Google Nexus 7 tablet to the list of attendees of this webinar and our last webinar, so keep an eye out for that. Okay, so we're here today to take a look at the Factory Design Suite. I want to introduce myself. My name is Thomas Smith. I'm an implementation consultant here at D3 Technologies, and I specialize in Factory Design Suite. So just a high-level overview of the Factory Design Suite. It helps you design and communicate the most efficient manufacturing layout by actually creating a digital factory model. And then in turn, we can use that model and incorporate digital prototyping, and therefore we can evaluate multiple what-if scenarios on that layout. Just gives us more control in the planning aspect and just bringing everything together as a whole. Now, the Factory Design Suite is a very broad set of software. Due to limitations in time, we're just going to be focusing on some of the key programs found in the Factory Design Suite, which would be AutoCAD Architecture and Autodesk Inventor. And then inside each of those, we're just going to take a narrow look at some of the tools that allow us to work in both a 2D and 3D environment and having our changes sync between the two environments. So again, due to time limitations, we're just focusing on a narrow aspect of the Factory Design Suite. So if you see something that piques your interest, please take note of that, and we would be happy to get you more information on the full capabilities of the software. But today, we're just solely looking at the ability to operate in 2D and 3D and have those changes sync between the two. So as I mentioned before, we're going to be focusing on AutoCAD Architecture and Inventor. We're first going to take a look at AutoCAD Architecture. So with AutoCAD Architecture, you get all your standard architectural tool sets, but on top of that, being that it's part of the Factory Design Suite, we're going to get some additional tools called the Factory Utilities. Now, these utilities work in conjunction with AutoCAD Architecture and give you some commands for optimizing and working with your factory capabilities within the Factory Design Suite. So again, there's a wide range of tools found in these Factory Utilities in AutoCAD Architecture, and we're only going to be focusing on a couple of those. The first thing we're going to look at is the Asset Browser. The Asset Browser is a browser that is part of the Factory Design Suite utilities, and this Asset Browser can be used to place 2D representation of factory components onto your factory floor. So this is a library, and in this library it consists of standard components and user-published components, and these are 2D representations of the 3D models that they're associated with. So as I mentioned, the Asset Browser contains system assets, which are standard library factory components, and then user assets, which are any custom components that either your company developed or you got, say, from a vendor and then published it as an asset. Within system assets, we're also going to have both local assets, which are stored either on your network or your local machine, and then you're also going to have access to cloud-based assets, which gives you a wide variety of access to many different asset types out on the Autodesk Cloud. So again, one of the other commands we're going to look at the Factory Utilities is the Sync Inventor command. So this is the command that when you're completed with your 2D layout, and you got all your factory assets placed on the factory floor, your walls defined, your doors, windows, etc., and you're ready to take that and generate a 3D model, you simply hit the Sync Inventor command. This command allows you to sync your 2D factory layout with Inventor, which then takes that information and automatically creates a 3D factory layout based on that 2D design. Any assets that you place out of the Asset Browser onto your 2D layout are automatically converted into their corresponding 3D model. So it just streamlines the process of going to 2D to 3D and really automates that. So I have here a video here, and we're going to take a look at that 2D to 3D workflow and just look at those commands that I mentioned before within the Factory Utilities and AutoCAD Architecture. So we're in here in architecture, and I'm going to come up and you're going to see on the ribbon we have an additional tab called the Factory tab. And on the Factory tab we have several panels, and these panels have a set of tools specific to that type of work you might be in to do. So we're going to focus on these palettes here, and on these palettes, one of the available palettes is the Asset Browser. So I'm going to turn on the Asset Browser. It's a fully functioning palette, as with anything in AutoCAD, so I can move it around, position it on another screen, I can dock it, auto-hide it, etc. Now within the Asset Browser, again I mentioned we have System Assets and User Assets. So we're going to first take a look at System Assets here, and this is just the standard content that comes with Factory Design Suite. Several categories of assets available. So you can have a wide variety of things to work with by default. So I'm just going to jump into conveyor. There's several types of conveyors here. I'm just going to show you, I'm going to hover my cursor over this conveyor. It shows that it's a local asset to my machine. I have the option here, I can preview that. It opens up this dialog box where I can get a nice preview of the 3D asset that's tied to it. I can even display that it's 2D representation. So that is the local asset, and if I have immediate access to that. Another type of asset that we have are cloud-based assets. So if I come in here, and you're going to see this factory icon with the circle on it, that indicates it's a cloud asset. So to have access to that, I simply need to right-click on the asset, and then I can select download. Now I'm going to show this in real time. Just in a matter of moments, it's grabbing this from the cloud, and now it's ready to be used within my factory layout. So it's real nice to have access to those cloud-based layouts. And then again, I mentioned we got user assets, and these are just custom assets that you've published or your company's published, either that you've created in Inventor or got from a vendor or something like that and have been published and defined as an asset. So now I'm actually just going to show you working with some of these assets. I'm going to come in here to come back into conveyor, and I'm just going to come down here. Let me get this off my cursor. I'm going to come in here, grab the straight belt conveyor. I just left click and drag. Now I'm just going to place it, simply left click out here to place it, accept its default orientation. I'm going to place another of the same. So using my standard AutoCAD commands, I'm specifying a base point. Coming in here, I'm using my object snaps, defining my orientation, and I'm quickly placing instances of this straight belt conveyor. So I'm just going to continue just to show you how to do this. I'm just going to place a couple more of these straight belt conveyors. Get these guys into place. All right, now I'm actually going to change type, so I'll just come over here to my asset browser. Let me reposition here. Grab the curved conveyor, left click and drag. So I'm just dragging this 2D representation of my 3D model out. I'm going to specify a base point using my AutoCAD commands. So what is nice is this allows people to stay in that 2D environment in which they're comfortable and work with the commands that they've been working with for a long time without having to worry about learning anything 3D, and then they can, as I said, sync it to Inventor and have that 3D model available. So again, I'm just place another curve here just to transition. And then for time purposes, I'm going to speed up here in a moment to the placing the conveyor. So I'm going to get another straight belt conveyor here, and then I'm going to jump to the completed conveyor system. So there I got my conveyor out. I got straight belt conveyors. I got some roller conveyors. And just to show you, I'm going to come out here just so you can see the variety of equipment we have available. I'm going to grab a forklift. Just going to drop it out here, orientate it. So, and then just for fun, I'm going to come out here and just grab a couple people so we can show some people out on the factory floor. So again, these are just like working with any block that you're comfortable with. They're going to have defined base points. You can also specify base points and just place them using your move command, rotate commands. So let's say my factory layout is complete. So I'm just going to come up here. I'm going to save it. Now that my layout is saved, I'm going to come to the Inventor found on the Suite Workflows tab. I simply just come up here and click the Sync Inventor button. That initiates the sync, and it's going to say it's going to close AutoCAD. Continue. So it's going to shut down AutoCAD. It automatically initiates the opening of Inventor Professional. So in just a few minutes. So, just behind the scenes stuff that is happening here, it's taking that 2D layout, it's associating it with an Inventor assembly. It's going to bring in all the map them to their corresponding locations on that 2D layout. So a lot is going on behind the scenes. So you're going to see, it's going to take some time. As you can see here, it's loading. It's got a lot stuff to do. So here it's created the assembly files you see over there, and now it's going to begin the actually importing that 2D data. So my factory tools are becoming available. Here you're going to see the factory floor. So in the factory layout, we actually have a factory floor and defined gravity so that our factory objects can sit on that factory floor. So now you can start seeing the 2D layout being populated with the 3D representations here in the factory side of Inventor. The factory floor is going to automatically resize. The position of that is corresponding to its location to the origin. So over here, now I have a new assembly. It's named same as my drawing that it was tied to in AutoCAD. I have access to my DWG overlay, and as you can see, all the individual components available here in my model browser that correspond to its factory asset that we placed in 2D. So real quickly, from working in a 2D environment, I was able to output and generate a 3D model. Now there's a lot more power that you can do, but again, due to time restrictions, we're limited to what I can show today. All right, so now jumping into the the Autodesk Inventor factory utilities inside of Inventor. Again, there's a wide range of tools available, but we're just going to focus on a couple of those, or a few of those. The first command that we're going to look on the factory utilities is the DWG overlay command. This command is going to allow you to bring in a 2D factory layout with placeholders for factory assets, and then have that layout placed onto the defined factory floor inside Inventor. Once that overlay is added to the factory, then we can actually start placing factory assets, Inventor models, and even vendor models on top of those 2D placeholders. Then we're going to have our asset browser. So very similar to the asset browser we saw in AutoCAD Architecture, we're going to have system assets and user assets. The only difference now is we're working with the 3D representation versus working with the 2D representation. So we're actually working with the 3D model. And similar to AutoCAD, when we are going from 2D to 3D, when we're wanting to go from 3D to 2D, we have a sync AutoCAD command. So this command allows you to sync your 3D model with AutoCAD and take that information and generate your 2D factory layout. So again, streamlining the process of going between the two software. All right, so again, I have a short video here. We're going to take a look at the 3D to 2D workflow, and then we're also going to look at how the changes start syncing between the two environments. So I'm just here in Inventor Professional 2015. You're going to see on the Get Started tab, because this is part of the Factory Design Suite, I got the Factory Launch Panel and some other Factory Tools. Factory Launch Panel, I got the New Layout, Create Asset, Factory Options. We're going to look at the new layout. So I just hit New Layout. Based on a template, it's going to generate a factory floor here. So simply, as you can see, again, I mentioned we have a factory floor, defined gravity, all that good stuff in this factory layout. When I come over here, I got the Factory tab, several utilities found on top of that Factory tab to utilize the factory utilities inside the Factory Design Suite. So we're just going to focus on a few of them. Just in mind. So here again, the asset browser, we got system and user assets available. All right, so coming over to my factory utilities, I'm going to click the Add DWG OK command, and I just select the layout that I want to use for my factory design, and I open. It's going to take a couple moments here as it opens that and positions it correctly, and then it's going to actually give me a dialog box where I can turn on and off various layers if I want to. As you can see, here's the layer settings dialog box. For now, I'm just going to leave the default layers on and click OK. Now it's going to place that onto my factory floor. As you can see, I got my 3D representations of the walls as defined in architecture, and then I also have this 2D placeholders for my 3D objects. So coming over here to the assets, again, I'm coming into the conveyors, and this time I'm going to grab the 3D model straight conveyor. Now when this asset was published, it was published with defined insertion points. So I can use those insertion points in the model and actually snap to the 2D layout that I had connected to this assembly. So I'm just going to set the orientation here and place that factory asset. Now I'm going to switch asset types. I want you to pay attention to what I do next. When these assets are created, they're created with defined connector points. That's these green nodes you see on these connectors. When these connector nodes get within tolerance, they snap together, giving you various orientations. So I can quickly and easily in this 3D environment generate my conveyor line just by utilizing the points. So as you can see, it's much quicker, and I know I'm going to get accurate placement because of those defined connector points. So I'm just going to place a couple straight conveyors. Now I'm going to place an in-raw conveyor. So I'm going to throw this guy on there. And so we have a change of height here. And I want you to take note as I pull out this curved conveyor and I position it next to the incline. It automatically resizes that asset to account for the change in height. So that is nice that it has the ability to calculate and modify the assets as needed. So again, I'll throw this straight conveyor in there. and it changed height as well. All right, so real quickly, I'm just going to throw some roller conveyors here to complete my conveyor line here. So again, utilizing these connector points, it makes this process really quick and easy. So I'm just going to throw in 3. Done. Now, as I mentioned before, we have the ability to work with other CAD models. So I'm going to show you that. So first, I'm going to turn off this layer of the 3D wall so that I have some better visibility of my factory floor. So just in a moment, it's going to open up the layer settings dialog box. So here's the layer size dialog box. I'm just going to turn off the walls so I can see the visibility. So I have this 2D placeholder here for this blower. Now this blower in this instance was designed in Inventor, but this could be an imported model or something. It just hasn't been published as an asset. So I'm going to place it, accept its default orientation, and with my triad here, I'm just going to change the orientation. And another thing I can do is move this base point. I can move this triad to a more accurate position that I can locate on my factory, on my 2D layout. So here you see it honored the floor, so I have a better position to snap to, and I just simply grab that node and snap it to where it needs to be located on its 2D representation. So I can quickly and easily work with non-assets as well, CAD models, imported models, etc. So just for fun again, I just like to throw out other types. So I'm going to quickly throw a forklift out here, accept its placement, and we always got to show some people working here. So I'll throw a couple hard workers in here. All right. So now we're going to say, we're getting ready to prep the model and we're ready to go to that 2D output. So I'm just going to come in here and turn back on the layer that I turned off just so the visibility of that layer is available in Architecture when I sync. So again, I just wait for the layer settings dialog box. It should pop up here any second. And there it is. Simply click the layer. It's turned back on. Now I'm going to come and save this assembly. It hasn't been saved. So by my defined project, I got a workspace location. So I'm just going to give this assembly a name. So I'll just call it, Factory Layout 5 here. I'm going to save that assembly. All right, now that I've saved the assembly, I'm ready to hit the Sync AutoCAD button. So I simply hit the Sync AutoCAD button. It's going to start making the transition to 2D and creating all the necessary files. This is saying it's created the DWG. Do you want to open it now? I hit open. Now back in AutoCAD Architecture, I have access to my 3D layout. And again, these are placed as factory assets. So these are just their 2D representations. So if I want to start making changes to that, so in this instance, I'm going to move and reposition of this forklift. So I'm just change his rotation here. I'm going to move him over here. He's picking up some material. And this guy's going to get out of his way, so he's going to go stand over here by the blower. So I've made some changes in my 2D environment. Now I simply save that, hit the Sync Inventor again. This time we're going back to the 3D model. Again, it needs to close Architecture. Here's my 3D model. You can watch in real time. It updated, moved all the models to their corresponding locations as we did in the 2D layout. So now I want to show you how, again, we can go back to that. Working here in 3D, go back to that 2D layout and the changes happen. So here I'm just going to throw a storage tank in. I know I'm just throwing this on the factory floor, so don't worry about that as far as where it's being positioned. But I'm going to throw it here on the factory floor, position it correctly. Sync AutoCAD. It's going to save my assembly. And then it streamlines the process. It's going to open up AutoCAD. And now you're going to see, that matter of seconds, now I have that representation of my 3D object that I placed in Inventor. All right, guys. Well, just to recap, with the small amount of time frame that we had to work with, we were able to look at the Factory Design Suite, and within that, we looked at the factory utilities found inside AutoCAD Architecture. We looked at the 2D to 3D workflow. Then we looked at some of the factory utilities inside Autodesk Inventor, and then we focused on the 3D to 2D workflow and how those changes can sync between the two. So I just, again, want to thank you guys for taking time out of your day to participate in our webinar. I got 3 short poll questions which will help us for future webinars and allow us to give some feedback. One of these poll questions will give you the opportunity to get more information from a D3 representative. So I'm going to initiate the first poll question. If you could please answer this, I would really appreciate your feedback. I'll just give a couple moments here while we get some feedback here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and switch to our next poll question. I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. And now, just another one. So here's the second poll. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. We got some quick feedback on that one. And lastly, this poll question is for you to get some feedback regarding the Factory Design Suite. All right, everybody. I'm going to close that poll. Again, I just want to thank you for your time and participating in our webinar. It's great to have you guys here with us today. And I do want to remind you that we are giving away that Nexus tablet, so keep an eye out for that. If your name is drawn, you'll receive, D3 will contact you. So thank you, everybody, and everybody have a great day. Goodbye.